Welcome. Welcome again to this mini series of AutoCAD training. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about layers, how we can organize our drawings properly and efficiently, and do have so good management in our drawings in AutoCAD. So the fundamental part of this is using layers. Today, we're gonna go slow in layers and to know the key components of layers, what is layer, why we need to use it, and how to apply those. So the important part here is to take off the layer concept clear and then utilize it properly in our drawings. So I have this drawing open in AutoCAD right now. I received this drawing from a college so that it was drawn very nicely and organized. Uh, the only thing that I noticed is everything is in white. So the color always identify layers. It's a part of what, the properties of the objects are. But for the purpose of this, let's go first to know a little bit what this is. So it's just a simple floor plan. You notice here you select any object, it actually have, those peculiarity, characteristic or parameters there. So it says, yeah, the color is by layer, the layer is 0, and so forth, other properties in layer. So what are those? So every single object in AutoCAD possesses minimum 4 properties. Those properties are, you can see here in the properties palette, color, layer, line time, line scale, and line weight. So basically, all of those are the most important properties, including transparency and in some cases, the thickness of the line, which is we're not going to be discussing here. So every single object possesses that, no matter what the object is in AutoCAD. So how is layer now be part of this and what really is layer? So layer is the way that we manage and organize properly our objects in AutoCAD. So is the a way to say, well, you have this big house. So this is the kitchen, this is the room, this is the office, this is the studio, and so forth. So how can we do that in AutoCAD? So notice here in my main home tab in the drafting and annotation, and by the way, it's going to be also for those folks that works in 3D in AutoCAD, that we have the layer manager there and the layers here. So when I click here on this list, you're going to see that there's a list of some layers already created here in this file. And also, if you notice here, layer properties, if you go there, you're gonna see this dialog box where it actually shows the layers that are in the project right now, in the drawing right now. So let's take a look at this. So what are the layers? The layers are just a line of reference with the possesses at least the 4 major, parameters for every single object that is in that layer is color, line type, line weight, and transparency. Now, those are the 4 major properties. There are a couple more, like I showed you earlier here, that they have the scale and the thickness, etc. But in the layers palette, we will control that. Now, notice there is the name of the layers, and also this area here, it controls the visibility of the layers, whether the layers are going to be visible or not. And remember, objects are going to be managed by layers. So if the layer is on or off, the objects that belongs to that layer will be visible or not visible. So how can we create layers and what kind of layers we can create and what is the settings or what it will be a naming convention for layers? Really, there are not any specific. Every single company or corporation or even every single designer decides, what's the layer naming convention that they're going to use and how they're going to be, using what kind of color properties they're preferred to use in one situation versus another objects and situation, etc. Now, layers can be organized in very, very, very good fashion way. Like, for example, architectural design with architectural elements, mechanical design with mechanical elements, and so on. So if I click here, you notice here we have to create a new layer to, yeah, freeze a new layer or even delete it or make the layer, the current layer purposely. So we can do that. So I'm going to create a new layer and notice immediately go here and prompt me to, make the name of the layers. Now, if I study a little bit this layout that is an office, you notice I have elements that are kind of common or they're going to be kind of very easy to identify. I notice I have some windows here, some doors. Obviously, they are kind of, the interior partitions, the exterior walls. They are a little bit of, custom uh, built or mill work elements here and so forth, stairs and even some miscellaneous areas of furniture here. So that gives us an idea of what will be the layers that we want to use or the naming that we want to place to them. So going back again here, if I select that layer, gentle, so I'm going to start with creating a layer walls. And if you want to be more specific, you can do walls exterior. And then I'm going to apply the color. Yes, random color here. When you go to colors, you're going to see a color palette in AutoCAD. We can expand this later, but I'm going to use a color like this one, a little bit kind of creamy, maybe. And obviously the line type is going to be continuous line. It's going to be fully, um, visible, so there's no transparency in this. And the line weight, I'm gonna keep it default. We're gonna speak about that in an advanced layer topic later on. Now I'm gonna create another minimum two more doors. It's very easy to identify, populate there. I'm gonna select another color there. I'm gonna select this color, and I'm gonna create another layer go windows. So I'm going to start with basic, elements that are very clear, identifiable there. So I'm going to use this color for the windows. Now, how can I make a layer current layer and what that means? So for example, if I go to the walls, and check mark here, I'm creating the walls, the current layer. You want to see in two situations. Here, immediately it's telling me that the wall exterior layer is active, and here is also here. What that means is if I create a line, for example, right now, the line will be, in that layer already placed. So you select the line is gonna get all of the information, the parameters in the properties of itself from the layer walls. That's basically what it is. Now, if I select both of them and I set here in the properties, I wanna be in the doors, notice how the lines automatically can adapt to those properties of that layer. And you notice here as well. You can do it right here in the properties palette or right here. You can switch now to windows and you're gonna see the lines actually go immediately there. However, when I deselect, my current layer is still set up for the walls. It's because that's what I have here on my layer palette that I made the check mark for that be the layer automatic there. Now, I can go back again to 0. 0 is the layer that is neutral to every single AutoCAD files. I'm gonna select this guy and I'm gonna delete them. And I'm gonna then start to kind of select the exterior walls, you notice here, including this one and this one. I call it this one, so like this. Exterior walls, and you notice here, these lines that represent for me the exterior of the walls uh, are in the layer 0. Once I decided to put it, to have my selection more or less finished, I'm gonna stop here a little bit. And with these other two, you're gonna notice I can go here or here and place those in the layer wall exteriors. And automatic, those elements by escape to deselect will start to be part of the layer and be managed now by that layer. As you notice here, I can continue placing this on the exterior walls or interior walls. I'm gonna create another layer for the sake of this. It's gonna be much more manageable. And again, it's gonna be dependent on how the company that you work for or how the revenue manager decides, what is gonna be the situation in your company to be using in one way or the other the layers, as well as the layer naming convention. You can tell I'm still selecting objects here. I think I'm almost done for all the exterior walls, in my opinion. And then again, place those on the wall exterior layers. Now, escape to this LED, you can start to see my drawing start to get kind of very easy to identify these guys. So for example, if I select these blocks and we're gonna uh, see that these blocks are windows, so I'm gonna place them in the layer windows and then easily they go. Now, needless to say, I have all of the doors here as blocks as well. And then you can start to select this. This is not the ideal situation. Many people still have that problem that they still are working all of the elements in one layer, layer 0, for example, which is the layer by default in every single AutoCAD file. And then they start to do this. Not good practice, have to say, but you can tell in this scenario with this example that is still, if it's not drawn in the proper layer, you still can organize your objects to the proper layer by creating them, escape to deselect, and create, have exactly, the elements be organized. Now, what happened here is this very nice thing. If I go now to layers and I start to work on the visibility, I showed you that I spoke to you a little bit about that. If I, for example, turn off the doors, you're going to notice that the doors are not visible anymore. So now that it start to give you power and manipulate data or information here. Now here, the turn off on the freeze is going to do the same. We're gonna discuss more in advanced layers topics, what's the difference between freeze and on, but for the purpose of the visibility, we can actually do either one of them. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go to the doors, to the windows, and to the wall exterior. I'm gonna turn off them, and then you notice now my drawing start to be more kind of a little bit interesting. So now it's going to be a lot easier for me if I decided now to create the layers of the interior. For example, I'm going to create a new layer called walls and then underscore partitions. Or you can call it walls interiors. And I'm not going to be keeping freeze because that was the last setting idea. I'm going to just open it. And obviously, I'm going to change the color to identify that. I'm going to use this light color. And I don't need to make it my current layer for this exercise because I have all of it there. It was there. So now notice here, it's going to be a lot easier. And this is the part that I always emphasize with the management because I started, from the larger one, interior one. So I'm going to be, much more precise in select these objects that belongs to another layer or another situation and with an ease. So it's not going to be complicated for me to do this. It, if I have everything there now, here is a lot easier because I kind of see perfectly, exactly what are the objects that I really need to change to the layer and not to guess or by accident select another one. So this is a good way to use layers to your advantageous way to work faster, much more accurate as well, and without even having any stress at all, because you kind have much more clean situation to select objects. So once I do that, I put in the layer walls partition, they belongs there. Now I can keep going on, for example, creating, millwork layer, and then another layer I'm gonna create is gonna use this red, and I'm gonna create another layer called, bathroom appliances, bathroom appliances. So I'm gonna place those two little, bathroom appliances there, and then you're gonna see it again. I'm gonna place this and this to that layer, and the midword, I'm gonna select all of these elements. You see this one, this one, this one that are part of the, counters. It looks like a bank, agency here, but I can place all of these. I can place even these ones there, and then you can have much more control over the objects and be organized well. I notice here that this line, and this is the interesting part of the layers management. Now, it's kind of overrides the other one, or actually is here, and I can tell now that I'm missing, or the person who created this file missing this. Now that gives me the opportunity to copy this line or mirror this line in the proper layer, because this line belongs to the layer, interior partitions, and then do any adjustments that it might be needed here. I'm gonna just quickly do the other two. I'm gonna quickly go to the layer. I'm gonna call one stairs, and I'm gonna create a little bit of green there, and I'm gonna use another one called, notes or text, or room names, probably. And then you notice how the naming convention is open up to any specific um, way that you would like to use, or again, like your company decided to use. Now I can close here and then simple select all of these elements here of the text that are already created there, and then put it on the proper layer. And notice how easy it's for me to select it, because what happened, I control the object's visibility and allow me to then work a lot faster or better, or even without having too much stress, or select or deselect objects that I shouldn't. So this last two is gonna be on the stairs, and then in the layer manager, I'm gonna turn on or unfreeze these three, and now I have my whole drawing properly organized with the exact right of a number of layers. That's why I went by stages, so that you don't actually need to pull out all of the names, possible names that you might need, just by doing some two or three like I did, and then freeze them or turn it off, and then see what else you have elements in your drawings, and then you can come out with the other layers that you need. And in that case, you can organize this. So I hope that this helps you to understand the basis for layers, how to create layers, what layers naming convention can be done, and how to do it in the way that I show you here, and how you can organize or pre-organize objects that were done before or created before, and put it on the right layer, and or also when you're gonna get start a new object in the proper layer by using the current layer. So I'll see you to the next episode, next time, that we're gonna talk about a little bit more about advanced layers techniques, so that you can actually stay tuned and utilize layers in the proper way. Bye now.